Hey everybody, my name is Scott Penney. I'm Vice President of Product Management here at BlueCat Networks. So BlueCat Networks is the leading provider of intelligent NetOps solutions that help customers modernize and future-proof their networks. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. We're going to start with how BlueCat can bring order to the chaos that usually exists within a growing network. Then we're going to explain how we can help you establish a really solid foundation for your network as you grow. And that means helping you to embrace new technologies like cloud or zero trust networking in a really efficient and safe way. We're going to do all this while helping you increase security, enabling automation, and creating visibility across your estate. I'm going to show you how all this works on the whiteboard, and then we're going to show you exactly how it works in our DDI orchestration solution. You'll see how easy it is to take control of your existing DNS and DHCP services, and how you can immediately gain network visibility and the ability to automate across these different solutions. So let's talk about how networks grow and change over time. Say I've started a new company, I built my first network, I'm probably going to use Active Directory to manage that network because that's what everybody does starting out. And that's perfectly fine, going to work just great. However, over time, things are going to change. So for example, maybe somebody does a project in the company that requires some open source capability from a 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 DHCP server that Microsoft doesn't support. Maybe you start to get really successful and you create a whole bunch of branch offices that use Meraki SD-WAN devices to manage their networks. And of course, nobody's going to do anything today without embracing hybrid cloud. Now, the problem with all of these things is they become just individual silos of network configuration. They don't talk to each other. So what happens then is people are going to be managing these things and they're going to introduce conflicts, and conflicts lead to outages. So for example, maybe somebody makes a change on the Meraki devices that introduces a new subnet at some remote office. Well, now I've got a problem because that subnet conflicts with something that I have configured in Active Directory. Now I've got two networks that are going to be incapable of communicating with each other. That means users can't get access to the information that they need. So we need to be careful when we introduce these silos that we don't let those things fester. We need to take control back to make sure that we keep a reliable network that's always available for our users. So how do we keep these conflicts from happening? Well, we do that by introducing an IP address management or IPAM solution, BlueCat's Micetro. Now, what Micetro does is it's an orchestration solution, which means that I can take control of the things that are already in my environment without having to go through a big process of doing a migration or consolidating tools. Micetro is going to get plugged into this environment, and within an hour, you're going to be connected to all of these various services. You're going to synchronize all the data, import that into Micetro so that you have a centralized view of everything going on in your network. And then Micetro, when you need to make changes, will actually orchestrate those changes across all of these different platforms without you having to really be aware of the subtleties of each one. What does that mean? That means that when my users, or maybe an automation platform, needs to make a change, they can now use this centralized and secure API gateway to do that. What this does is it introduces security that wouldn't be there before. What I mean by that is we introduce role-based access controls, which don't exist on a lot of these platforms, and we set you up for the ability to do zero trust network access principles across this estate. That makes your network more secure, and it also makes it simpler to manage. That means also that when I have to do an integration with a third party, like say ServiceNow for IT service management, and I need to trigger actions from there, like say add a new server, I can actually use that same API gateway to create DNS records for that server, reverse records so that the security team, when they do their network scans, they'll know what that device is, and also set up maybe a DHCP reservation so that I know where that network or where that server is at any given time. Okay, so now that I've taken control of the network infrastructure that I'm managing, I want to turn to some other challenges that we're going to run into. And this is when we actually start doing DNS resolution as a client. So say I am a user on that network and I want to get to BlueCat.com. Well, BlueCat.com by itself isn't a thing. It's actually a series of what we call CNAMEs. So CNAMEs, you can think of them as redirects in DNS. So when this client does a lookup, a DNS lookup of BlueCat.com, it gets an answer back that says, actually, you need to look up web.ad.bluecat.com. And here's where it starts to get complicated. So web.ad.bluecat.com is also a CNAME. It goes to web01.bluecat.azure.net. Okay, well, that's something else. So when I look that up, I get another CNAME, and this one points to a private link address. Now, this is important because a private link address is a Azure functionality that's going to make sure that my communication with this service that I'm pointing to, in this case Cosmos, is going to be secure. The problem is when I get that answer back from the DNS server, I'm going to get one of two different answers. If this client is actually within Azure and talking to Azure's private DNS service, I'm going to get this secure internal answer, 192.168.10.11, which is secure. If I'm not in the Azure environment, if I'm, say, in a branch office querying a Meraki DNS or SD-WAN device, I'm going to get a public address for this, which means that my traffic's going to get routed out onto the internet and back to Azure. Now I'm actually broadcasting my intent across the internet, and that is not ideal. So how do we solve that challenge? Well, we solve that challenge by not actually having to go through that whole process. We do that by adding a highly intelligent DNS resolver into the mix, which is our DNS Edge product. Now, what Edge is going to do is it's going to take all of that complexity of resolution out of the picture to make sure that every internal client gets that private secure answer. So we're not going to make all of those CNAME queries. We're just going to go straight to the best answer for that client. Now, the important thing about Edge is when you use it, you always get the best response, and you get a secure connection. Now, on top of those two things, there's a lot of other things that we want to make sure that we get out of this kind of transaction. Now, on top of those two outcomes, we get some extra fun out of this. We want to make sure that everything that we do is secure. So we introduce a DNS firewall that's going to keep clients away from bad domains, command and control networks, things like that out on the internet. We're also going to log every single one of those transactions. So we'll know exactly who queried what when, down to the actual user that's logged into that device. So now we have much more visibility and accountability into what's going on our network. Also, we're going to make sure that we load balance those queries. So if I am in a regional office in North America, I want to make sure that I'm getting the right service for North America. I don't want to send all that traffic over to Europe. So Edge provides all of these additional capabilities to really build that foundation of stability, efficient resolution, and security. As we switch over into our demo environment, I first want to show you a list of the services that are currently being managed by Micetro. Here you can see that we've got Microsoft DNS and DHCP, but also open source Bind, Kia, and other services such as AWS Route 53, Azure, Meraki devices, NS1, and our own BlueCat Micetro DNS and DHCP service appliances. All right, so first let's take a look at the Microsoft DNS environment that we've discovered on our Active Directory servers. Here you can see a list of zones that we've discovered and are now currently managing with our Micetro solution. If we go into these, we can see all of the appropriate records, name server records, A records. If we wanted to make a change to one of these, we could simply go in, make a change, and give a comment to let the other members of our team know what we're doing, and save those and apply them. And you can see that that change was made immediately and also propagated to our Microsoft Active Directory environment. Now, we also can see the history of the changes that have been made here. So if we ever did need to roll back a change, we can very simply go in, select undo, put in a note, and that change is rolled back. All right, let's move from our view of DNS over into our IP address management or IPAM view. This IPAM view is going to show you a list of all the networks that have been either discovered through managing a service, imported from a spreadsheet maybe, or manually created by me or one of the people on my team. Each one of these networks exists somewhere in a Micetro managed service. So this can be a mix of Active Directory networks. These could be networks that are defined on a DHCP or a Kia DHCP server. Wherever they happen to be, they'll all show up here into one simplified integrated view so that I can then quickly find the information that I'm looking for. One of the nice things about having this view is that I can create smart folders where I group information about a specific site, such as Wiesbaden. Now, this site here in Wiesbaden is actually part of an Active Directory sites and subnets configuration. So you can see when we look at some of the networks that are associated with this, some of them say that they're part of Wiesbaden and they're inherited, but others are missing a AD site designation. So we can fix that by going to the largest network here, this /21, and we can actually then add the /21 to the site that it needs to be part of, Wiesbaden, and that will be inherited by all the other networks that are at that site. Now I've simplified the management and the visibility of all these networks so that I can tell exactly which networks are being serviced out of the Active Directory site of Wiesbaden. Now, since we're in this view, we can see that we maybe have another issue that we need to solve. So in the Microsoft DHCP configuration, we can see that I have a failover pair for a couple of these scopes, but not all of them are in a failover pair. So if I lose one Active Directory server, I might no longer be giving out leases on that network, and that's not great. So I can easily add this missing scope here to a failover group, just like the other one, and make sure that I don't have an outage if I have an interruption in one of my AD servers. So to do that, I just click, select the appropriate failover group, and apply that change. Now I've immediately got more resiliency on my network, so I don't have to worry about clients not getting DHCP leases when they come on my network. All right, now let's say I need to allocate an IP address for a new server on one of these ranges, but that range is pretty full. Let's go in and take a peek at what's in here, and I can see that I only have 2 free IP addresses, but something immediately catches my eye since I have all this data in one spot. I've got this record here that doesn't seem to have ever been used by a client on my network. So that is curious, and I want to take a peek and see why I have a DNS record for something where no device has ever actually appeared. So let me reveal the DNS entry for this. And when I go over to the DNS view, I immediately see that the timestamp for when this thing was created was actually about, looks like 3 years ago. So this is probably an extraneous record that needs to be cleaned up. So I can go and click and delete it. Delete that entry. Again, make a note so everybody knows what's going on. That is immediately gone on the DNS view, but let's go back over to the IPAM view and make sure that that got cleaned up so that it is then free for reallocation. If I go here and I refresh my view, I can see that that entry is gone, and that allows me then to have 3 free addresses on this space that I can use for my new server. All right, the last thing I want to show is how we can actually use this tool to help with, say, a security investigation. So let's say the security team has come to us and they've given us an IP address and said that this thing is doing something wrong on the network. So we can go ahead and search for that IP address from our quick action bar. We can see that there has been a lease assigned for this IP address. And because we have visibility into all of the changes and all of the lease history, we can actually go in and look to see all the activity for this specific IP address. So we can see which MAC addresses have actually been issued this IP address and timestamps and things of that nature. So this will actually allow us to take this information and correlate it with other security information from our SIEM to more quickly track down this client or this user. So to summarize what we talked about today, Micetro solution is going to allow you to take control of your network. It's going to enable automation, and it's going to help you avoid conflicts and outages. Our Edge Solutions Advanced Resolver is going to help you resolve all of your resolution challenges. It's going to secure and optimize all of your network traffic and help you achieve 100% network visibility. If you want to learn any more about these solutions, visit us at the show or go by our website, BlueCat.com.